Hello, prospective listeners, viewers, all of the above. Welcome to the final wrap up for Why Men Hate Women series. We're here. I'm Martina. This is the wonderful
Lyzeth,
and this is Perspectives with Lyzeth and Martina. And like I said, this is going to be a wrap up. We're going to spend probably the next 25 minutes, 30 minutes or so, hopefully, because we can talk. Doing a wrap up of just the book that inspired us. I think really we were already inspired, but then we found that book, and that book was just like
it confirmed.
Yes, this is confirmed. We're doing it. So if you haven't listened or watched our series on this, I recommend you go back and do that. It'll help you before you get to this episode. You'll be like, what the hell are they talking about outside of why men hate women? But it'll give you a little bit more perspective and insight as to what we've been talking about for the last two videos. If you're not subscribed, you should be doing that too. You can do that on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you get your viewing of the news, because we are somewhat news people broadcasting us out to you. So you should definitely go and do that. And that would be great. Welcome to the Perspectives family. So it is Friday when we are recording this. So I will be indulging. Praise the Lord. Amen. Hallelujah. Allah, all of them. Okay. Buddha. I'm just saying all of them. No offense to anybody, but we praising over here. It is Friday, and so I will be indulging in a little white wine. You said I got some blackberries in there. Because my doctor
said, I was gonna say, what you have in that glass?
My doctor, she was, because I was trying to eat less fruit with sugar, because pineapple, basically all, I hate to say it like this, but all the good fruit have a lot of sugar, and at least the ones I like. Okay, watermelon, pineapple, even apples. And so she was like, you can eat as many berries as you want, like blackberries and blueberries. Yeah. And so I'm just like, okay, this is a way to make me and eat my blackberries. I put it in some white wine to celebrate Friday. So, but yeah, I think we can just get into it. How we want to start? I mean, I know there's something specific you want to talk about, but I don't know if you want to start off with that.
No, I think we can ease into that one, I think. Okay. But,
hit them with that. Okay.
But, I think just kind of reflecting on sort of the series as a whole and sort of what we've been talking about. And I know we said in a previous episode, the hate towards women and sort of the what people think women are supposed to be, what's the norms for women, a little previous to what we might dig into later, but it really is subtle. It's definitely not something that's not always like in your face. You see it, and I think just because I've had recent conversations with like a male friend and understanding how they most men don't see things right the way that we women experience it, or don't really they have the privilege to be like, well, I don't see that, like that doesn't happen in my workplace, that doesn't happen around me, that doesn't happen to whatever. And I've had to just sort of pause and be like, okay, here's how it plays out for me, like here's how I've been approached by men in the street, and here's what I kind of go through, and here's what my friends go through, and here's, as a professional woman, what you might encounter, or how we as women have to sometimes really put aside who we are, or even kind of say, maybe I have to adopt the whatever dominant culture is where I'm at, and kind of just adopt it and go full in, so that I can move up, because if you try to change things, then you're a troublemaker, or you're whatever, or like, oh my God, how you're just wanting to change things, everything is fine, like you're so progressive.
I was like, if it's broke, don't fix it, but it is broke.
or they try to be like, oh, you're just these feminists, like it's a bad thing, right? Like it's and it's like no, like it's and I think I've just come to realize how much um men are either don't care or are oblivious to how it really kind of and it could be both but really just and it's really just through reading the book, and obviously the book deals a lot and if you're your first time listening to us and you're sticking with us, the book is Invisible Women. I have it right here, so if you're watching, this is what it is. And it does it does really focus on data, right? So it's around the data bias in a world designed for men. And it does, but it really kind of opened my eyes of like how much data is missing, what the gap is for women, like in so many industries, whether it's the corporate, whether it's government, whether you're looking at finances, whether you're looking at healthcare, looking just at even just topics that can be triggering, like abuse and sexual assault and like all these things. There's so much data gap when it comes to gender, and specifically around women. And this is why you do have this notion and sense of hate towards women, right? Because it's like, well, if you can't prove that it's happening or that it's happened, then clearly you're lying or it doesn't exist. So that's just a few thoughts of like, as I kind of look back to what we've talked about, and and there's obviously so much more to talk about. Like we've only
there's no way we can like this is like this would need to be the series. Just focusing on this. Like for this alone, that would be the whole series. Yeah. But it's I think even though I've listened to the book, I've read the book, I've started to reread the book. So I'm going back to do what you did and like highlight and make notes in the margin and stuff. And it still boggles my mind. I'm like, but why do men hate us though? I think like that's still because it's like you hate us for things. Well, because back up. You and I were talking earlier this week because we were talking about that male friend of yours, and we were saying because I think mainly because white men, I think first up, and then just men in general, they have run the world since the beginning of anything that was established. They have been it because they've killed or maimed or raped or beaten or tortured anybody else who tries to do anything. And it's so much that they have oppressed themselves and they don't even see it.
I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah, and that to me is like, perhaps that's why at times they do have blinders on, because this is the world that they have created. And all the men is like, well, I didn't create that. I didn't do that. Maybe we ain't talking about just the individual person, honey. You're still benefiting from the way the world operates.
You're a part of the whole. Like that's
you're a part, because at the end of the day, you are a man. Like you identify as a man, you are part of the problem. It's okay, because women can be a part of the problem too, because we're going to talk a little bit about that later, because what else have we known? We haven't lived, at least here in this country, as far as I've been here, and that's been a few years since I've been on this earth.
I was like, is she about to say her age?
I was going to say my age, but I've been here a few years on this earth. And as far as I know, there's been no other way of doing anything else outside of a white, patriotic, capitalist society. So at the same time, how can you not expect women or even people of color? We've talked about it too. We all become our own oppressors. That's just basically, I mean, and that's a bigger issue than this, but I think it definitely does say a lot where everybody just walking around oppressed and they don't even motherfucking know. I just had to say it. They don't know.
I only have water, so I got no wine. But you kind of made me think of something that I'm curious to learn more, and we can look into the future for this, because the book obviously touches on different parts of the world, right? So it's not just focused on for us like in the United States, but I would love to just get the point of view of of women in other countries, right? Like I think of a like a country like Mexico, who for a very long time obviously has dealt with machismo and has dealt with
Mhm.
colonization and this, I mean, obviously colonized by European Spaniards, looking at that. And I think that's something to even look into, and just an interesting viewpoint and topic of how um whether it's data gaps, whether it's white supremacy, patriarchy, and sort of colonialism has impacted the way women are viewed in other countries, and what that looks like, um, and things like that. Because it's not a unique issue to the United States. This isn't one of those unique issues like gun violence, which we will at some point come back to
Gotta talk about that.
on this on this platform. But it's not, and it's something that the book really kind of highlighted to me, how it's not unique, because the patriarchy and obviously white supremacy plays into that. But it's such a global issue, and you see it, that it's something to definitely continue talking about it and figuring out, because it is not a unique issue. And it's, to your point, it can be very mind-boggling to think about how women across the world are either treated as second-class citizens, are marginalized, our rights taken away, are dictated to be a certain way, to act a certain way. um and one of the things you know that in talking to my friend, is like, men don't understand that we as young girls are told, well, that's not ladylike,
Yes.
that's not what girls do, and it's like, there's these norms that we all grew up with, that are our moms and our grandmothers and our great grandmothers and our great 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 like, that have grown up. And are some of those things shifting with the newer generations? Of course, but it's going to take so much time for that, because the people who are in power are operating with that norms, with those knowledge of what women are supposed to be, and they're still in power. Like, that's the thing. Here in the United States, white males dominate our government, and across, state governments, federal governments,
Yeah, across. Yeah, absolutely.
so it's there's just so much left to obviously dissect. But I think there's just a lot to still to learn and kind of grow from. And I think this has, to me, been a very eye-opening series, and being able to conversate with you, Martina, and just kind of hear other people who watch or listen kind of give their feedback to me, whether I agree with it when it comes from a male perspective or I don't. And it'll be interesting if we ever decide to bring a male into this conversation, to revisit this conversation and have a male perspective. It'll be interesting. I don't want to do it right now, because
I don't do it right now either. But I do think a part of us, again, because if we're gonna do anything about this, because these are systemic things, the men are gonna have to come into the conversation, because
Yes.
they're
We
Yeah.
talked about male allyship before.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, in the book it does talk about male allyship, and I'm like, look now, you part of the problem. Well, you started the problem, so you're gonna have to be a part of helping to fix the problem. So eventually, yeah, we are gonna, like, men are gonna have to. That's if we want to make the world a better place. Now, if the world keep going to hell like it is, especially here in the United States, then maybe we won't ever get to this point. But but I would think, and going back to the example in the book, I think it was Iceland, where like all the women just stopped working for a day. Now, America is not progressive. It's not by any means progressive, although people think it is. But I think the light bulb is starting to go off now. It is not. But there are progressive countries out there, I think, such as Iceland, because like they don't even carry guns. Well, I think that like in the UK, well, at least maybe in London or England, I don't think their authority or their police force carry guns either. But I think in Iceland, they don't have guns. So there are more progressive countries than the United States. So all this to say, I think, I don't know if it's going to happen here first in the United States, the type of change that needs to happen. Like you said, with like, the millennials and the Gen Zs, things are changing. And we just need to kind of keep that attitude going, because as bad as millennials and Gen Zs really get talked about and get pit against each other, we really have been the two groups that have been starting to make the changes, and like just going beyond like, yeah, I see this, like, we got to make this change. I know it's bad, but then you go back and watch TV, because just the thought of trying to do anything, don't get me wrong, I like TV too, I'm just saying. But millennials and Gen Zs have really taken to their platforms and even inspiring older generations
to
come out and speak up, and again, allyship across all forms, I think. And so we really have been the ones that are really pushing the envelope to start to see things change for the better, and really equality for, in this case, women, but equality for everybody. And again, I think, it's just that thing to me. Like I said, after gone through and done this research and read the book, it still fascinates me. Like someone like your friends, they just can't see it, man. They just like, everything you say is like a rebuttal, but then you come back with it. And then it's like, I think he even told you, it's like, I don't sit around talking to people about these sort of issues. That's probably part of the problem too. Because he's like, you are his only friend that he's even talking to anybody about this. So it's like,
I mean, and mind you and I are probably two of the people who spend time talking about these issues, right? Like, we obviously, the platform that we have came because of those conversations. I know you've mentioned it before on our channel, where like, these aren't conversations or topics that you're sitting around at the dinner table or at the restaurant talking to your friends. But I'm like, those are the kind of things that I love to talk about and bring up, and sort of really challenge people to think differently, because I want to be challenged, even with my own beliefs and my own, whether it's, whether we're talking about religion or women's rights or anything, like, we can't always be in our own bubble. And mind you, my friend has said some things that have made me pause and think, and then sort of be like, okay, I'll need to kind of revisit this topic with you later, because I don't have anything. But I think, it's one of those things where men are probably they're not sitting around with their friends having this conversation of like, man, you ever thought about why, women are treated so badly?
And the ones that do, I'm just going to say, because, we always talk about the TikTok up here. We are TikTokers fanatics. And even like when you see the guys that are on TikTok talking about, they're like supporting women and like, they're getting bashed by other men. It's like,
other men,
she's doing this, or well, how about you? Well, I couldn't say this, and well, honey, you ain't got to say it, because you done so much. You done so much damage. So it's okay. But even then, it's like, but yeah, I think what men do, I hope men are starting to have these conversations again. I think I think the younger generations are maybe starting to have these conversations.
Hopefully.
I don't know though. I don't know.
Because I mean, it really is. I mean, it's unfortunate, right, that that as young, you really would hope that teenage boys, because they're such an formative age, right? You're kind of going through this, like, would have some kind of, I don't know, like, education or literature that's geared to them on like what this all is, this social issue, because this is a social issue at the end of the day. When we think one of the chapter titles in the book is women's rights are human rights, and I think that has to be talked about more with the younger generations, and really brought up, and because I think you have this rebuttal from men of like, well, it's not all men. And I don't think we've ever said it's all men hate women or all men do this, because we know that it's not. But the thing is, it is majority of men. I can't distinguish if you are a good man or a bad man. Like I can't distinguish that. Like nobody can, right? Whether you're good or bad, like just from the outside, that's not something you can do. So as a woman, I have to be cautious of every man, because every man has the capability to do harm, right? Like to act out on whether it's aggression, whether it's this sort of ideal of like, well, if a woman isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, you have to put them in line, or you have to whatever. Like this is, and that's has been the norm, right? Okay, I guess I'll go into the topic that I was telling you, Martina, before we started, right?
Yeah.
As I was re-listening to the book, there was a chapter, and it's the women's rights are human rights. And they were talking about Hillary Clinton and her presidential run, and how Hillary was just really, I mean, verbally abused in so many different ways, and sort of talked about it in a very negative light, in a very aggressive way. Like I remember just anything that she did that didn't come across as ladylike or just too aggressive, like whatever, like, or I think one of the things that they were saying was that one of the criticism was that she was too ambitious.
Yes, I do remember that. Even just folks, not even in the book, but I think people talked about that outside of the book. That that's what,
that's what people were tweeting out. Like even, other politicians, or even other, whether it's news or media, was saying like, oh, she's just too ambitious. But never once was that said of any of the male candidates. And mind you, the one that actually ended up winning, because they did not win the popular vote. So to me, if you didn't win the popular vote, you ain't president.
I really don't. We need, listen, okay.
I know. We can go on a tangent.
We'll talk about politics in another series. We won't. Okay,
we'll come back to that one.
Yes,
we definitely need to talk about it. But nothing. He was the one that was being too ambitious, and in the book, she touches on that. Like nobody said that someone who has no political background, has no any what you would consider maybe prepared you for one of the most powerful positions in the world. Like nobody told him that he was too ambitious. Everybody was like behind him, but because
they were okay with him out here raping people and sexual assault folks, there ain't nobody saying nothing.
Because what?
It's the norm,
right? It's the norm. So one of the things that she points out in the book, and let me see if I think I still have it open here. She quotes an associate professor of psychology from UC Berkeley, and talks about how, particularly this referring to Hillary Clinton, and she's like, she was forging into a territory that is overwhelmingly associated in people's minds with men. And as a result, voters experience her candidacy as a norm violation. And that's when I had to pause, because I don't think it registered me the first time I listened to the book, like that particular section. And just to kind of hear the two words norm violation, like I had never heard those two words together. Like it just didn't, I mean, from what I remembered, I've never heard them. And she goes on to say that, norm violations are quite simply aversive and are often associated with strong negative emotion. And I thought about how there's so many women who either seek positions of power or just do something that for some reason are not seen as ladylike or something that women would do. And there's such a negative and aggressive reaction to that individual. And to look back, I mean, I definitely think Hillary Clinton deserves an apology from a lot of people for the way that she was treated during her run, and still is, just because she had the audacity to go out here as a woman
Differently.
and just challenge this norm to like literally violate this norm that while we might not have ever seen it, like while we never really would have associated as a norm, but it really was, and to like go out here and have the really just, you know, quote unquote audacity, but just the right. Like she had, any woman has the right to go, clearly anybody has the right to go and seek, you know, this powerful position, you know, wherever, like you have a right to do so. Um and just to kind of hear it and understand it. And one of the things that the author then goes to talk about is just, you know, power, you know, powerful women, you know, experience this norm violation because there is this sort of gender data gap, right? Like there is that thing because we don't get taught about powerful women, you know, women activists. We don't see the norm of women in power. Even today, while we do have female CEOs and, you know, women in, it's such a small percentage. And you still don't see them, you know, out here in media, you know, you don't see them portrayed in like TV or like, you know, popular culture. You know, it's very, you know, far few in between that you see it. Um and a lot of times there's always like that male antagonist, right? That male, like there's always that thing. And I think uh it's just so interesting to kind of hear and understand, like, man, like I look back growing up and yeah, I didn't really get taught about any powerful women. I didn't get taught, you know, any, you know, historical individuals. I mean, you know, and thinking of like, you know, Harriet Tubman comes to mind, you know, from a
Girl, I went all the way back to Cleopatra. I'm like, that's the one I learned about.
you know, like that's like, you know, as someone who kind of like did something out of the ordinary and you know, and kind of, but like, you know, you know, Queen Elizabeth, maybe, you know, like you kind of have that, but it's sort of like, wow, like to not even have a reference point of to who women are. And even just growing up, you know, within my, you know, whether Latino or Mexican culture, um just thinking about telenovelas and the way it portrayed women and continues to portray women, you know, uh it's also those things. But you know, you don't hear, you know, about lawyers, about CEOs, you know, writers, artists, like all those things growing up. That's what I'm saying, like it's gonna take time because it isn't to right this generation, this younger generation that's being brought up by millennials and, you know, and then, you know, Gen Z are going to maybe hear more about, you know, different type of individuals, you know, women, you know, who have the ability to learn about women who are in power and things like that. But it's just it's just fascinating to think that something, you know, a norm violation, the reaction that people had, and the reason why we most likely will never have a woman president is because we still believe this thing. Even when you think about Kamala Harris, how much aggressive and things were said about her, and she was just vice president. You know,
I
she's
know.
our vice president, like, and it's like, you know, and the whole thought that because of her candidacy during, you know, for vice president and all of that, there's even conversations that I've heard or kind of like, well, you know, she will never be president. There's no way she will ever win uh an election. Like she will never. And it's like, but why? Like tell me why. What is it about, like, is she not
Norm
qualified?
violator. She's a
That's it.
norm violator.
And that's it, right? Like that's the only thing. And you add that she is a woman of color, and that's a whole other layer, I think, to even this norm violation, right? You're not just a woman, you're a woman of color.
Mm-hmm.
You are stepping out of what you're supposed to be. But it's just, man, it's insane. Because I think one of the things that the author talks about is, you know, she says something like, you know, I think I've experienced norm violations. Um, and it got me a pause to be like, I wonder if I was to look back into my professional career, are there points, or just, just in general, where maybe I did something that just violated what people thought I'm supposed to be, whether it's the introvert box, whether it's me being a Mexican woman in this country, like
I'm sorry.
different ones. There's different ones I can.
Well, yeah, but one thing we always talk about the box. I think this is a great connector here, the box, because anytime again, we're focusing on Hillary and women, but anytime people go outside that box, they're violating the norm.
Yep.
Like, this is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be happy being in that box and being where you are.
We put you in.
Yes, that we put you in.
White supremacy put you in.
Put you in. So that's where you need to stay. Don't go out the box.
Yeah.
And you go out the box and you experience the shit that Hillary and other women in her position have experienced. And that's just, it really kind of made me think of that, about how we all put each other in that box. But I think, because I really do like that. I'm gonna start using this. A norm violator. I'm gonna use this. This is really good.
That chapter, like, go back and read that chapter, Martina. If you all who have been listening and watching, if you have the book, or like, go. It's chapter. Let me go back. It's the Women's Rights Are Human Rights chapter 14.
And I would urge women to read that too, because like we said, it wasn't just men coming after Hillary. No, it was women.
Yes.
It was women. And shit, to be honest, sometimes women are just as bad as men. Because again, that's all you've known.
It also like reminds me of like how if you are an assertive woman, you're either labeled bossy or you're just a bitch at the end of the day.
Bitch. Yep. Mm-hmm. Or both.
Or both. Like, that's, combine those two and that's what they'll call you if you're assertive, for the most part. And I think that is part of what the norm is, right? Because assertiveness, confidence, all of that is associated with men. And I think about just us as women navigating the professional world, right? The two of us, and how we miss promotions or something because someone just thought that there's just something not right with her. It had nothing to do with the qualifications or anything. It was just, there was something outside of what the norm was that they're like, I don't trust her because there's just something isn't. And it was just this, because whether you're, obviously if you're a woman, you try to look beyond those things, but I mean, we're all a product of this patriarchal society. And I'm sure with men who are doing the hiring, there is that thing, right? Like if I'm being interviewed by a male, I'm sure there's things that I might say or do that might just be like, oh, well, she might just be too much, or she might just be a little too troublemaker because she's over here, talking about progressive things, right? Or like,
no, but no one realized that Bob might be the troublemaker.
Yeah,
and not Melanie. I'm just making up people's names.
But and that's what it really made me kind of think about, because again, there is this idea of what women are supposed to be, and she goes into talking about how one of the things that is seen for women, you're supposed to be like, I think it's like you're supposed to be like warm and like welcoming, like kind. And then, but if you are not that way, or you come across as cold or whatever, like that's not right. But a man doesn't have to be warm or like welcoming. They could be standoffish and cold because they
have oppressed themselves. Okay.
But it really goes into it, and I wish we could just dedicate a whole, I was
like, this could be a whole podcast, like in itself. It's really outside of the book. Like the book is a conversation starter, but this is way beyond just even this 3 or 4 episodes that we've done.
Yes.
So,
I mean, and I'm sure, I mean, obviously we're probably going to revisit this topic and this conversation in the future, because we have to, that we didn't touch on everything. But, you know, as we're kind of thinking about the series as a whole, and, you know, I think as women, you know, we have to challenge the norms, right, of what women are supposed to be and how we're supposed to be, and all of that, because there is unfortunately this power structure that wants to, you know, really oppress us, and particularly in the United States. As we're filming this, we, you know, we do know that Roe v. Wade was overturned, and that's a whole other conversation that we'll have to follow up with to this series. But it is a reality, right? This isn't something that women are making up. This, and I think that's what this book really kind of details, is like, it's not made up. It's just nobody is putting the time, money, and energy to find that information, to find the examples. Because that was I mean, I'm putting my friend on blast out here, because that was the one thing he kept asking. Like,
I don't know him, but if he watches this, you need to be put on blast. I hope to meet you one day.
He's cool, but you know.
Yeah, you start getting real. He start. Oh.
But you know, it's one of those things where it's like people don't understand. And it was the question that he kept asking was, well, what are the examples? What's the data? I was like, I can't, because there's a data gap. Okay, there's data biases. Okay, there's a gap. I can't give you the examples. I can't give you the statistics. I wish I could.
But there are some damn good examples in that book, though, that talks about this. Read the book.
That's exactly what I told him. Like, download the book, listen to it, read it, because it really lays it out there. You know, and if the author ever comes across our podcast, we'd love to have you on here, you know, Caroline, because it just so grateful to have this type of book. And I'm hopefully we'll find some other books that kind of go along with this. But you know, there is that gap. Like, I can't give you statistics if nobody is putting.
I can't give you what we don't have.
What we don't have. And but what I do have is my lived experience as a woman of color, as an introverted woman. Like, all these, like, I can give you all these examples of my life and how I've seen it, and also to take pause and look back and things that maybe I didn't realize were obstacles or things like that. It's just been interesting, you know. It really is. And I know we posed this question early on, is like, why are women so invincible? We are invincible. We are invincible. But we're also invisible. Yeah. But you know, it really is. I mean, that's all I got to say. I mean, I got more to say, but
I'm sure we're coming up on like 25 at the shit. We probably like 30 something right now anyway, but that's okay. We'll wrap this up in a bit. But I do think it's like some of the final takeaways and words of wisdom that I can offer is that I think everybody should read this book, you know, because you got to do the research and learn for yourself. Yeah. You know, we can't force people to do it. And, you know, shit, even trying to get critical race theory into curriculum. You know, that is something people are hell bent on, because like, oh, you might hurt their feelings. Well, my feelings have been hurt, you know? So it's like, listen, sometimes you got to go through things to understand, literally walk in somebody else's shoes to understand where they're coming from. And then it makes no sense to continue sweeping things under the rug just to make some people feel better, because everybody's not feeling better. So if you're not doing it for one, or you know, if you're not doing it for all, don't do it for one. That's what I'm trying to say. But I think also to women, I think women, I full support women, but we got to do a job being allies for each other too, because a lot of, again, and it's hard going against the system. It's like you're trying to walk against the wind. But shit, just, you know, the set touched on, you know, Roe v. Wade, there are plenty of women, you know, that stand with that too. And again, whether you pro-choice, pro-life, that's your business. You know, that ain't what we're saying, but you need to be able to see everybody's perspective and be respectful of everyone, and really kind of, you out here saying stupid stuff. If women out here saying stupid stuff, now this don't make no sense. Big hand do it. And I'm talking to some of these ladies down here in the South, and I'm from the South. I can pick on the South because I am from there. So I'm talking about some of these Southern people, okay? And even here in the Midwest, because people think, that racism and prejudice and things like that is all in the South. This shit right here in Chicago, as we have already talked about, but that's also another topic, and we ain't got time.
I mean, the Midwest in general.
Hell, the Midwest in general. Like, really, I mean,
the whole United States. Let's not pick and choose. It's the whole. It's just all 50 states out here.
Because even folks in LA, they get stupid too. So it is what it is. But I challenge men to stop getting so offended. What are you offended by? I almost feel like you feel you being persecuted, and maybe you are feeling that way. Maybe you should feel bad. You should. Maybe you should. Maybe that'll help you understand where everyone else is coming from. And that's all I'm saying.
Well, as usual, this has been a great conversation, and it's not the last conversation we'll have on this.
Yeah.
And and just to give some insight to some future episodes, definitely have some additional voices coming in and sharing. And although the topic won't be why men hate women, it most likely will touch on it. It will most likely, be an extension of it, because as we know, like, as whether it's professional women, whether it's, women who are out here, being moms and being caretakers, we are, it is all correlated. There is this subtle hate, and hate elicits a lot of emotions, I think, to men and people in general.
That's the primary emotion they have, hate and anger. I'm saying.
But it is like, it feels like hate, when you are regulated to be a certain way, when you are regulated to act a certain way, to think a certain way, to dress a certain way. I don't even think we got into the whole dressing thing and how but all of that is driven by this desire to oppress, to control, and see it, and what influences that. I think we've touched on a few things of what has influenced that, but there's just so many more things, and what influences, and continues to drive really that hate towards women. So we, Martina and I are definitely keeping that top of mind as we look to future, whether it's series or conversations, is that we are two women of color, with our own experiences, and we want to elevate women's voices. I mean, that's what our platform is here to do. So keep an eye out for more series, for more conversations. We will be having some fun ones in between, because we know that some of these topics are pretty heavy, but we are hopefully able just to kind of have some laid back episodes as well, and break the tension.
You got some late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes. Yeah, so we're kind of thinking of what else we can do, but as always, thank you for listening, for watching. If you have any thoughts, please comment, please DM us. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram. You can find all of that information in the notes sections in the podcast, but on the show notes, and also on our YouTube description. So feel free to find us, reach out to us, and let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know if you learned anything. Let us know if you're reading the book, or if you read the book. Let us know, because it'd be really great from that. But we will close out this series, but we'll be back with some more episodes, some more topics, some more craziness that is Martina and Lyzeth. and bringing that to you all. So again, thank you, and we will talk to you soon.
Peace.